This morning, I'd like to talk about something that I believe is very, very important for young men to understand. I'm talking now about ambiguity, but more importantly, the title of this program, Weaponizing Ambiguity. Now, before you get into a rush here to judgment, let me explain something. I know there are a lot of people that are viewing this right now are thinking, oh my gosh, how did Earle Hughes become so violent and aggressive? Where did this propensity for war and violence come from? Did it come from the purchase of his AR-15, which, by the way, I loaned to Fern and has not gotten back yet because David, her grandson, refuses to give it back? And that was expensive years ago. Okay, where is this aggression coming from? Why is Earl just uh, pushing the corral gate open to subject his viewers who are watching for whispering, and now we get warfare. And so just before we get down the road too far, I want to explain what it means to weaponize ambiguity, because it's not what you think. We're not talking about warfare, armaments, tanks, guns, nuclear weaponry. No, we're talking about the subtlety of the power of ambiguity, but more than the second part, then how it becomes even more powerful when ambiguity is used as a weapon. A lot of young men in the world today, particularly in America, are afraid of making commitments because they see that when they make a commitment, then it's like they didn't want to make that commitment, but now they're stuck and they've got to do all kinds of things to fulfill the commitment. And that's because they weren't able to plug into the power of ambiguity. If they'd had the ambiguity there in their minds before they made the decision about the commitment, the person asking for the commitment would have faced the ambiguity, and then the commitment would the ambiguity would leverage the commitment away, so to speak. So this is all about how we get young men to understand how to use ambiguity to stay away from commitment, or at least commitments that they don't want to have. So before we dive into weaponizing ambiguity, let's just take a minute to talk about, well, what is ambiguity? What is something that's ambiguous? So something that's ambiguous means that it's uncertain what the meaning is because there could be more than one meaning. I'll repeat that. Ambiguity is the idea that the meaning here is uncertain. It's inexact because there could be more than one meaning. Let me give you an example. One example to show you what this means, how this works. So take this particular sentence. I saw a man on a hill with a telescope. I saw a man on a hill with a telescope. Now look at all the different meanings here that you can just pull out of that one simple sentence. For example, there's a man on a hill and I'm watching him with my telescope. Number two, there's a man on a hill who I'm seeing and he has a telescope. See? There's a man and he's on a hill that also has a telescope on it. Four, I'm on a hill and I saw a man using a telescope. Finally, there's a man on a hill and I'm sawing him with a telescope. You see, all these different meanings collide together into one simple sentence when it says, I saw a man on the hill with a telescope. This is what an example of the power of ambiguity, because the person that hears the sentence, I saw a man on the hill with a telescope, is confronted now with 5 different meanings. It's overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. And so this whole program is devoted to the idea that, well, how can we use inexactness like ambiguity as a weapon in our relationship with our friends, our family, our wives, our spouses, on our job, in the country, all over the world. And frankly, let me just say that this issue, this topic, is the one that I get asked more often to talk about than any other, as I've traveled all across the world giving talks about how to become a whisperer, how to hear the whisperings in life. This is the topic that draws the most attention. How do we weaponize ambiguity so that we can take advantage, we can have an advantage over others and for good, an advantage over others for good, not for bad, but for good. And that's why this is so important, I think, for young men to understand how to get an advantage over other people by using ambiguity. So what I'm talking about here with respect to weaponizing ambiguity is that we have to realize that there are three arenas here for ambiguity. There's relational, there's vocational, and then there's situational. So all three are different arenas, and they're all important for young men to understand. And so let me explain this then, like in the relational arena. So that means that in the relational arena, it's like everything relating to relationships, like boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, father, husband, wife, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, good friend, not so good friend, close friend, not close friend, relationships. So we have relational ambiguity. And in this case, in the one question that is prominent now with relational ambiguity arena is, who are you? Mm-hmm. Who are you? Now, when a young man hears that, the mechanism here to answer that question is to find the polar opposites and then head for the equator. Let me demonstrate. So, who are you? Find the polar. So, one polar opposite is I don't know. The other polar opposite is nobody knows. And the equator is somebody knows. But it's not me, and it's not you. It's somebody that we can't find. So you communicate that. That's how you weaponize ambiguities. In this case, you convey to the other person that, well, you'd be willing to answer the question as best you can, but you're not the person to answer that question because you're not the someone on the equator here. And that'll just throw the other person into a tailspin. They'll not understand that. And that's how you weaponize the thing. And it'll hit them broadside right across the head there. And they'll think, whoa, what's that all about? And then they'll walk away. And they won't be pressing you for the answer to that question. Who are you? And you'll be free of that question. The relationship will just, there'll be a separation there. And you will not have to worry about explaining who you are and why you do the things you do and what your hopes and dreams are. It's just empty there. It just comes to an end because you were able to find the polar opposites and then just hit right there at the equator. And that's what I mean about relational ambiguity. The answer there is somebody knows, but it's not me and it's not you and it's not anybody around here. We don't know who it is, but there is someone, but we can't find them. And that's the end of that. So the second arena here with respect to weaponizing ambiguity is situational ambiguity, the situational arena. And this is like any situation you're in. I don't care where you're at. Walmart, Target, Kmart, Macy's, Neiman Marcus, wherever, White House, right there on the street in the middle of the highway. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a situation. And in that situation, the question here that pierces here in this situation, this arena, is what do you want? See, this is the question in the situational arena. It happens all the time. This is the prominent question. What do you want? Well, using our technique, we find the polar opposites and then we come to the equator. Well, what are the polar opposites here on what do you want? Well, one polar opposite would be nothing. The other polar opposite would be everything. The equator then is something. But you see, the something's undefined. It's something, but you can't quite put your finger on it. So the person that asks you, okay, what do you want? Now, do you want pizza? Do you want lasagna? Do you want to go to Houston or do you want to go to Anchorage? Do you want to be young or old? Do you want to lose weight or gain weight? Just what do you want? And the answer here is right there in the equator, something. I want something, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And so this is so freeing. When you can't put your finger on what you want, for the other person to see that, it's like, well, what are they going to do? They can't get out of you what you want. And so they just have to just put their hands down and just wipe their brow and think, okay, I'm not going to go any farther with this because going any farther would be just doesn't accomplish anything. And this is so powerful because when the people realize that they can't quite figure out what you want, because although you want something, but it can't quite figure out what it is, they'll just walk away. You don't have to make any commitments. You don't have to make any promises. You don't have to say anything else except, well, I want something. And this is very freeing for a young man. He doesn't have to run away. He can stay right there in the situation, but he doesn't have to commit to anything. And that's what the power of weaponizing ambiguity here in this case is so clear. It's so obvious and so well welcoming to the young man that does not want to worry about the situations that he finds himself in. So that's that one. So now we come to the third arena for weaponizing ambiguity. And that is vocational, the vocational arena, the arena dealing with our jobs. And so here in this arena, the prominent question is, what are you willing to do? See, just imagine the employer talking to the young man, what are you willing to do? Now here in this case, using our technique again, the polar opposites are, well, less or more. And in the middle, the equator is maybe less, maybe more. You see, it's a combination of those two. Maybe this, maybe that. It's got to be something, but it can't quite be, we can't quite put our finger on it. So the employer is thinking, okay, what do you want? What are you willing to do here in this job? Oh, I see that you're willing to do, you might be willing to do less, you might be willing to do more. And so in this case, the employer is thinking, well, in the hopes that he'll want to do more, I think I'll try to entice him with perhaps a salary increase, maybe a bonus, end of year bonus, maybe more time off, maybe a company car or something like that. Maybe more. And if he says maybe less, you think, okay, I think maybe Earle isn't going to be as committed as I once thought. Well, what that might mean is, well, less responsibility. You're not going to be the team leader. You don't have to write the report. You'll give that to somebody else. You can come to work without a big long list of things ahead of you. You can probably enjoy your job more because there'll be less for you to do because the employer won't be able to commit to you because you can't quite figure out what you'd be able to do and so forth. So this is very powerful for the young man that hates his job, or for the young man that is so bored with his job that he can't wait to get out, or for the young man that is clawing for the top. And so we have here the weaponized ambiguity of maybe less, maybe more. And the employer is just at a loss to know what to do. And so it's like throwing a dart at the wall. Maybe he'll do this, maybe he'll do that, maybe he'll do everything at once. Maybe he'll give you a company car and then no job, no responsibility whatsoever, which is the best of both worlds. Probably for the young man, he had a big company car and very little to do at the office. But that could happen when you have this weaponized ambiguity here in the vocational arena. And so these are the three arenas, the relational, situational, and vocational. And all three, now the questions here are, who are you, what do you want, and what are you willing to do? See, and so basically when you take these three arenas, you're encompassing practically your entire life. This is what the world is all about. This is your life right here in a nutshell. And you're always going to have these three arenas. Now, there may be more arenas, and if we find more arenas, I'll talk about them later in other programs. But right now, we're focusing on the three arenas. And so young men need to understand that they need to understand that technique. Always look at the polar opposites and come to the equator. And if they do that, they're never going to have to worry about those three arenas or any other arenas that we cannot yet see. Because they'll be able to know, they'll be able to do what I've just instructed here, so that they can be free and powerful and independent of commitments that they don't want to make, or that they're afraid of making, or that if they do make them, they can't figure out how to break them. So that's what this is about, weaponizing ambiguity. I use it all the time in my life. I find it very powerful. I've used it a lot with Fern. She's a wonderful friend, but Fern does get on my nerves, and so I've got to kind of push back. And she keeps asking for things, and I find out that these weaponized ambiguity things are very helpful in keeping her at bay. Well, that's what this is all about, keeping these arenas in control, at bay, so that the young man can focus on what he wants to do, which might mean more sleep, eating, more travel, more adventure, and less things that pull him down and and anchor him into concrete where he can't breathe and he eventually dies, and that's the end of him. We want to avoid that. We want to avoid a premature death. And these weapons here can do that. They can help us avoid dying on the job and dying in relationships and dying on the highway because we weren't able to, hit by a car, train, whatever. We can avoid death, we can avoid boredom by using these weapons. And that's why this is one of the most powerful programs I've ever had to deal with here on the program, on the internet, because I'm so happy to do that because I have found these weapons to be very successful. And the young men that use these weapons, they're going to be successful too. So that's where we're at. And that's basically the whole thing here. Don't have anything else to add. But like I said, if we find more arenas, we'll add them later on. But right now, just 3 arenas, 3 piercing questions, and then polar opposite equator. You've got the whole picture there, and that's what it's all about here. So, thank you for watching today.
Dance with me. I want to be a partner. Can't you see? The music is just starting. Night is calling, and I am falling. Dance with me. Fantasy could never be so killing. I feel free. I hope that you are willing. Pick the beat up and kick your feet up. Dance with me. Let it lift you off the ground. Starry eyes and love is all around us. I can take you where you want to go. Oh, dance with me. I want to be a partner. Can't you see? The music is just starting. Night is calling.